My name is Priya, and I was 35 when I understood that 10 years of holding a school together could be released with a single breath. Not with a shout, not with a slammed door, with a manila envelope, a notary stamp, and a filing date that had already passed while they were still choosing their saris. I want to be clear about what this story is. It is not a revenge fantasy. There are no poisoned tiffins, no burned report cards lit for spectacle, no cinematic monologue delivered through tears. It is the sound of a machine stopping because one person stopped oiling it. The machine in this case was a family. My family. Maud David. They ran a small private school, Banerjee Academy, 12 classrooms in a converted colonial bungalow, held in a trust that bore my brother's name, like a vanity plate on a car he had not paid for. For 10 years, I had been the one who designed the curriculum, trained the teachers, managed the admissions, and kept the school affiliated with the state board. My brother, Arjun, held the title of principal. I held a master's in education and a state teaching license I had earned 8 years earlier, credentials his name could not legally carry because he had never qualified for the BET. They knew this. They had known it for years. What they did not know was that I had already filed a change of head of institution with the state education department. The form was dated February 14th. The compliance inspection was scheduled for March 15th. And on March 12th, my family invited a corporate ed tech group to tour the school over brunch, hoping to sell a franchise contract they had not earned without me. I was invited too. They thought I was coming to arrange the mishti. Visual: a school auditorium, a blue ribbon, a boy's new bicycle. I was 11 the first time I understood that my hands were useful to them in a way my voice was not. The winter I turned 11, our school held its first annual debate competition, and my parents entered Arjun, who was 13 and had never spoken in public without stammering, because they said the competition was good for the Academy's profile. I spent 3 nights at the dining table after dinner, writing his speeches on the Bengal famine, on Tagore's nationalism, on the need for rural education, with arguments sharp enough to cut glass and citations I had found in my father's old college book. Arjun watched cricket while I practiced the delivery in the mirror. On the day of the finals, I carried his notes to the auditorium in a folder, still warm from the printer, the ink smudging my fingertips. My mother patted my knee and said I was her little helper, that she didn't know what they would do without me. At the judges' table, the organizer asked who had written the speeches. My father stepped forward and said Arjun had developed the arguments, that he was learning the family business, that his son had a real head for oratory. Arjun stood beside him in a clean kurta, smiling at the judges, while I was sent to the back to organize the refreshment table. The debate won a 500 rupee trophy. Arjun accepted it with a speech about dedication and tradition that I had written the night before. That night, the 500 rupees bought Arjun a new cricket bat, an English willow with curved grain. I received a 100-rupee note and a pat on the head. I did not cry in front of them. I'd in the school library, surrounded by copies of Tagore, because my mother had said, Priya's always been our foundation. Why would we change that? She said it while folding laundry, not looking up, the way you note that the pressure cooker is whistling or that the Dobie has come. I was useful. I was not worth a trophy. Visual: a dining table, a shoebox of receipts, a calculator, I was 17 when I found the 48,000 rupee deduction. My father had renovated the school library that year, adding a computer lab with 6 desktops and a projector. And he was drowning in receipts he had shoved into a shoebox, labeled taxes in black marker. The box sat on the dining table for 3 weeks. I organized them alphabetically, then chronologically, then found the Section 80G deduction he had forgotten to file for the charitable trust, and the depreciation schedule for the new equipment from the March audit. 48,000 rupee. That was the exact difference between my father owing the tax department 18,000 and getting a refund of 30,000 that spring. He clapped me on the shoulder at dinner and told my mother I had a real head for business, that I was a natural. I asked if I could be added to the trust bank account so I could pay the teachers' salaries directly instead of waiting 3 days for him to find his checkbook and sign every voucher. My mother reached across the table and patted my hand. "Priya's always been our foundation," she said. "Arjun needs to learn the financial side for his MBA applications. Why would we change that?" I looked at my father. He was already talking to Arjun about his cricket average. The 48,000 rupees saved the academy that year. It paid for Arjun's summer coaching camp in Bangalore. My name did not appear on a single document. Not the trust deed, not the bank account, not the affiliation letter. I was useful. I was not worth a signature. Visual. An education diploma, a train ticket, a crossed-out date. I completed my M.Ed. At 25 with a specialization in curriculum design and an offer to join a progressive school in Kolkata, 40 minutes north by local train, a place with a pedagogy people wrote articles about. The same week, my mother had a bad turn with her diabetes. Nothing catastrophic, the doctor said, but she needed to reduce stress and avoid early mornings and heavy lifting. My father called me into the kitchen the Sunday after her discharge and said the academy needed an academic coordinator, just for now, just until my mother was back on her feet and feeling like herself again. Arjun was 27, working at an edtech startup across town, building his product portfolio, as my mother put it, her voice lifting on the word portfolio, like it was a fragile thing that needed protection. He was too busy. I was not too busy. I was available. That was the word she used. Available. As if I were a conference room. As if I had no edges. I moved back into my childhood bedroom, the one with the faded wallpaper and the desk that still had my college graduation photograph in the drawer. I took the local train 40 minutes each way to my school job and handled the Banerjee records at night, sitting on the edge of my bed with a laptop that overheated and a phone that rang until 11. I designed lesson plans. I trained teachers. I fixed the projector at midnight with a YouTube video and a screwdriver I bought myself because the maintenance budget my father set was imaginary. For 10 years, this was the rhythm. 10 years. I want you to hold that number. 3,650 days, more or less, of being the one who answered the phone when a parent had a crisis at 2 a.m, who drove to the school in monsoon, floods to check the roof because my father couldn't climb the ladder, who learned the state education codes by heart because no one else would read. The personal cost was not the labor. The labor I could do in my sleep by year 5. The cost was the life I did not build while I was oiling the machine. Visual. A studio apartment listing, a red pen crossing out a date. At 27, I had saved 60,000 rupees and found a studio apartment 3 blocks from the progressive school, with a window that faced east and a ceiling fan that rattled but worked. I gave notice at home. I packed 2 suitcases. My mother cried. Not hard, not with noise, just enough to make the air in the kitchen feel heavy and wet, the way it feels before a nor'wester. She said my father still wasn't strong enough to handle the stress of new board regulations, that Arjun was up for a promotion and couldn't be distracted by admission emergencies, that the parents only trusted me, that I was the only one who knew the school management software password and the name of the reliable book supplier and the exact day the state inspector liked to visit. She did not say, "Please stay." She said, "Priya's always been our foundation." I unpacked my suitcases. The studio went to a history teacher named Ananya, who worked 2 floors above me. I watched her carry a money plant into the building from the train window. I stayed for 4 more years. At 30, I met someone. His name was Farhan. He taught economics at the university and laughed at my jokes about Bloom's taxonomy, a laugh that made other people in the coffeehouse turn to look. We dated for 12 months. He had a small flat in Ballygunge with a balcony and a cat that tolerated me. He wanted me to move in with him after the Puja holidays. I wanted to. But the October board inspection was due, and the science lab had a chemical storage issue that required daily check-ins with the safety officer, because my father had chosen the cheapest contract. My mother had started introducing Farhan as Priya's friend from the school, even after I corrected her twice at Sunday lunch. Farhan asked me once directly why Arjun's name was on the trust deed when I was the one who handled every crisis. I did not have an answer that sounded sane outside my own head. I said I was helping the family. He looked at me for a long time. He left after 14 months. Not dramatically. No slam doors. He just stopped asking me to choose him. I did not blame him. I said you am I saw dears as well as you must you. I had not chosen him. I had chosen the lesson plans, the lab inspections, the family that needed me to be available for 10 years. Visual, a state education seminar, a stack of pamphlets, a notepad. The mechanism was born in a state education seminar I attended alone on a Tuesday night in January. I was 34. The state had passed a new Right to Education Compliance Act, effective January 1st, requiring every recognized school to have a head of institution who held a current teaching license from the state council and who was the designated academic authority responsible for all board examinations and affiliation renewal. The license required a master's degree, a teacher training qualification, and a state eligibility test. Arjun had never taken it. He had never intended to. I had cleared the net in 2016, after a board inspector questioned our examination protocols, and I realized I needed legal standing to sign academic documents under my own credential. I passed on the first attempt. My license number was NET 2016-7789. I was the only person in my family who could legally head the academy under the new act. The state clerk explained that existing designations would expire on March 15th unless renewed with the licensed head's signature and a notarized affidavit of active administration. I sat in the back row with a notepad and wrote down every deadline. Arjun sat at home, watching cricket. My mother had asked me to go because, as she said, I was the one who understood that kind of thing. She did not ask what the act meant. She assumed I would handle it. She was correct, but I understood something else that night. The act created a paper trail. It required the state to keep a public record of the head of institution. and it allowed any licensed head to file a change of designation with 30 days' notice, provided they could demonstrate they had been performing the duties. I had 10 years of examination papers, teacher training logs, and inspection reports with my signature on them. I had a lever. It was boring. It was legal. It was mine. Visual, a newspaper, a man in a blazer, a framed article. The erasure did not happen all at once. Oh, it accrued like interest on a debt no one intended to pay. In January of my 35th year, a local newspaper featured Arjun as the visionary educator behind Banerjee Academy's digital transformation. The photographer shot him in the computer lab, wearing a blazer with his name embroidered, holding a tablet over a student's desk. The tablet was mine. The digital curriculum was from my Google Drive. The article quoted him at length about his philosophy of modern education. He spoke for 15 minutes without mentioning a single syllabus revision, a single teacher evaluation, or the fact that the board affiliation had been up for renewal, and I had spent 3 weeks preparing the documentation while he was in Goa. My mother framed the article. My father sent the link to every relative on WhatsApp. I was mentioned once in the final paragraph as the dedicated academic support that keeps the timetable moving. I read it while grading final papers, the red pen still in my hand. By then, the form was already sitting in a file in Salt Lake, waiting. I just hadn't decided if I would use it. Visual, a bank lobby, a glass conference room, a business card. The second incident happened 2 weeks later. My mother asked me to accompany Arjun to the bank to help him organize the financials for the investors' review. She said it casually, while folding school uniforms, as if she were asking me to pick up milk. I brought my laptop, my external drive, and a binder of records I had maintained for 10 years, every examination log pressed flat, every teacher file annotated in the margins, with training dates and performance notes. The loan officer, a woman named Farzana with silver hair and a charcoal cerise, asked Arjun about the academic certification. Arjun hesitated. He looked at me. I answered. I explained the affiliation protocol, the examination security plan, the teacher qualification documentation, and the continuing education requirements for the last 3 academic cycles. Farzana turned to me, genuinely impressed, and asked if I was the head of institution. Arjun laughed. It was a sound I knew well, the laugh he used when he was uncomfortable and wanted to reclaim the room. He said I was his assistant, that I helped out with the paperwork, that he was the principal, but he liked to keep his sister busy. He said it like a joke between professionals. Farzana did not laugh. She looked at me for 1 second, longer than was polite. I looked at the binder. I had color-coded the academic histories by quarter. I had highlighted the 230,000 rupees in personal funds I had advanced to cover teacher salaries during the 8-month fee collection slump in 2022, the months Arjun had been in Dubai. I had not listed those advances as loans. I had listed them as operational support in the ledger, language that made them sound voluntary. Arjun signed the bank disclosure forms with a pen I had brought from my flat. My name appeared nowhere on the documents, not even as a witness. Farzana handed him her business card. She did not hand me one. I drove home in silence while Arjun talked about the car he might buy with his share, a white Honda City he had already picked out online. I stared at the road and thought about the State Education Act. I thought about my license number. Kewini. Net 2016 7,789. I thought about how easy it would be to file a single form with a notary public and a postage stamp. How easy and how permanent. Visual. A state council office. A notary stamp pressing into paper. I filed the form on February 14th. I took a personal day from the academy, the first one I had used in 16 months. I told no one. I told no one. Not my mother, not Arjun, not the teacher who covered my classes. I took the bus to the state council office in Salt Lake with a folder of proof. 10 years of examination papers with my signature as the academic coordinator. Teacher training logs paid from my personal account. Inspection reports prepared by my hand. And my license card laminated in plastic. The clerk was a man named Haroon, with reading glasses on a chain and a cough that rattled in his chest. He reviewed the documents for 13 minutes without speaking. He said the change of head of institution would be processed within 5 business days, and the new certificate would be mailed to the address on file. I gave him my flat address in Gariahat, not the family house in Balagunj. He did not ask why. He stamped the form with a sound like a door closing and handed me a carbon copy. I paid the 500 rupee filing fee with my own debit card. I kept the receipt. Now I did not issue it. I had already mailed the form. It was sitting in a file in Salt Lake waiting. Then I went to the post office and sent a registered letter to the EdTech Group's attorney, Patricia Vance, whose name I had found on the company's website under due diligence team. The letter was 1 page, single-spaced, with no greeting beyond the formal address. It stated that as of March 1st, the designated head of institution for Banerjee Academy Trust had changed pursuant to State Act 14B, and that any sale, inspection, or transfer of academic authority required my signature and physical presence by state law. I did not threaten. I did not plead. I did not explain my reasons. I stated facts in the flattest language I knew, the language of regulators and clerks. I kept the registered mail receipt with its tracking number. I kept the stamped copy of the filing. I kept the 500 rupee receipt in an envelope labeled administrative. I went home and made a cup of tea and sat on my couch and waited for March 12th. The family did not know. They were planning the brunch menu. They were planning the sale. They were planning to hand me the napkins and ask me to check the mishti. Visual. A hotel conference room. A silver tea service. A mishti display. March 12th arrived warm and bright, a morning that felt like a promise no one asked for. My mother had rented the conference room at the Oberoi because she said it impressed investors, gave them a sense of the prestige they were buying into, excellence that came from attention to detail. There were white tablecloths, and a silver tea service, and a platter of rosagala, from the sweet shop Arjun liked, the one that charged 20 rupees for a piece. I arrived at 10:45, wearing a handloom saree I had bought for a conference 3 years ago, and never worn because my mother had called that morning to say my father was having a bad day, and could I please check the generator in the school basement. My mother kissed my cheek and told me to make sure the tea was strong and to set out the rock sugar, not the white cubes, because Mr. Sharma was a man who noticed detail. Arjun wore a navy blazer that cost more than my monthly rent, the blazer he had bought with the bonus from his startup after I had covered the affiliation renewal fee that January. My father stood by the window practicing his handshake in the glass reflection, his palm opening and closing like a fish gasping. The investor arrived at 11 o'clock exactly. His name was Mr. Sharma. He was 60, maybe 65, with a mustache that looked expensive and a watch that caught the light and held it like a threat. He brought his attorney, Patricia Vance, a woman in a burgundy blazer who carried a leather folio and did not smile when she shook Arjun's hand. She looked at me as she entered the room. I was standing by the tea station. I nodded. Ah, she nodded back. It was a small movement, barely visible, but it held weight I could feel in my collarbone. My mother poured the tea into china cups. I did not touch the pot. I did not move to help her. Arjun launched into his presentation, a slideshow on a laptop I had configured for him the night before, the slides I had designed with the academic charts I had compiled from 10 years of data. He talked about enrollment growth. He talked about board results. He talked about his hands-on leadership style and his personal relationships with the education officials. He had met 2 officials in 10 years. I had met all of them. And not proudly jersey. My mother beamed at him like he was a photograph she had always wanted to frame. My father nodded along, his eyes watery with pride or tea. Priya took notes with a fountain pen that scratched against the paper. She asked one question while Arjun was mid-sentence about projected expansion. Who holds the current teaching license for this institution? Arjun waved his hand as if brushing away a fly. I oversee all of that, he said. My sister helps with the paperwork, but I'm the principal on every document. Patricia Vance stopped writing. She looked at me again, her eyes level and calm. I was still holding my manila envelope. My fingers were not shaking. Visual, a china cup, a fountain pen resting on a legal pad. Arjun's answer hung in the air like smoke from a blown candle. Mr. Sharma smiled, a smile that meant he was ready to move to numbers, to student-teacher ratios and franchise fees, the part of the meeting where men like him felt most at home. My mother filled the silence before it could become awkward. Priya's always been our foundation, she said, turning to Mr. Sharma with a hostess's grace, as if she were explaining why the napkins matched the curtains, or why the flowers were marigold. She's been doing the day-to-day for, 10 years now. She laughed, a sound like silverware settling. We always say she's the engine and Arjun is the steering wheel. My father chuckled into his tea. Arjun straightened his tie and let the metaphor sit there, let it grow roots in the room. Mr. Danon and Bimanius Almod becomes it. Sharma looked at me with a new expression, the look of a man who has just been told where the bathroom is, a brief acknowledgement, before returning to the important people. Patricia Vance did not look at me. She looked at Arjun with the flat patience of someone who has heard this particular lie before. Mr. Alnimi. Banerjee, she said, her voice even and unhurried. Are you stating that you personally hold the state teaching license required under Act 14B? Arjun's smile faltered for half a second, a crack in the glaze. I hold the management title, he said. The license is a formality. My sister took the exams, but I run the institution. How? I make the decisions. My mother touched Mr. Sharma's arm, a gesture of reassurance. Priya's always been our foundation, she said. Why would we change that? The phrase again. The exact words, delivered with the same casual cruelty as the day she had denied me the debate trophy, the same dismissive music as the night she had kept me from the studio flat. I felt them land in my sternum like a bookmark placed in a chapter I had already read 100 times and was now ready to close. Patricia Vance closed her folio. The snap of leather was the only sound in the room for 2 full seconds. Mr. Sharma looked at his attorney, confused, his smile dimming. My mother was still talking about my thoroughness, my reliability, my availability, the way I never took vacations, and answered my phone at midnight. She was selling my labor as a feature of the academy, like a new computer lab, or a renovated library, or a reliable examination system. Arjun joined in, explaining that I would of course stay on through the transition, that I was part of the package, that the investor would find me invaluable, that he had already factored my continued management into the pro forma. He said it without asking me. No, don't you? He said it as if he were offering a tool that came with the building, a blackboard or a set of textbooks. I set my envelope on the table. The sound was soft. Paper against cloth. It was enough. Visual, a manila envelope, a hand sliding documents across mahogany dahlia. I need to correct the record, I said. My voice was level even, the same tone I used when telling a parent that their child's transfer certificate would not be processed without proper documentation. I had practiced the sentence in my car on the drive over, speaking it to the steering wheel until it sounded like weather, like a forecast, like something that simply was. I opened the envelope. The flap made a clean tearing sound. I slid the first document across the table to Patricia Vance. It was the certified copy of the change of head of institution form, filed with the State Council on February 14th and processed on March 1st, bearing the clerk's stamp and my signature in blue ink. This is the change of head of institution form, I said, filed with the State Council on February 14th and processed on March 1st. The previous designation of Arjun Banerjee was terminated by operation of Act 14B, which requires the licensed head to be the designated academic authority of record. I slid the second document. It was my teaching license, number net 2016 77789, issued 8 years ago, current through next December, with my photograph laminated in the corner. This is my teaching license, I said. Number net 2016 77789. I cleared the net in 2016. I passed on the first attempt. My brother has never held a teaching license. I slid the third document, a spreadsheet printed on green paper. This is a ledger of operational contributions from my personal funds to Banerjee Academy Trust over the last 10 years, I said, totaling 2,30,000 rupees. None of these have been repaid. None were documented as loans in the trust deed. They were drawn from my personal savings to cover salary shortfalls, equipment repairs, and affiliation fee delinquencies that occurred when the trust account was empty. Arjun laughed. It was a high, nervous sound, the laugh of a child caught in a lie he thought was too small to matter. Priya, what is this? He said. Are you having some kind of episode? My mother looked at my father, her eyes wide and wet. My father looked at the documents as if they were written in a language he had never learned to read, his mouth slightly open, his hand hovering over his chest. I did not look at any of them. I looked at Patricia Vance. She was reading the filing with a concentration that excluded the rest of the room, her finger moving down the page line by line. She turned to Mr. Sharma. Mr. Yale. Minyetan. Sharma, she said, her voice carrying the weight of her 15 years of practicing law, according to the trust registration and the state council records, which I verified this morning. Ms. Banerjee has been the certified head of institution since March 1st. Mr. Banerjee has no active teaching license on file. Under the franchise agreement's representation and warranties clause, this constitutes a material misrepresentation in the sale disclosure. The investor is entitled to terminate due diligence immediately. Mr. Sharma's face changed. The mustache did not look expensive anymore. It looked like a mask that had slipped. "Arjun?" he said. "Is this true? You told me you ran this institution personally." Arjun stood up. His chair scraped the floor with a sound like a scream. "She's my sister," he said, his voice rising. "She works for me. This is a family misunderstanding. She's upset about the sale, that's all. She's emotional." Patricia Vance did not look up from the ledger. She turned a page. "Miss Banerjee," she said, "did you file this change of designation independently without coercion?" "I did," I said. "Did you personally perform the administrative duties listed in the affidavit of active administration?" "For 10 years," I said. "Every examination, every teacher training, every inspection, every 3 a.m. call from a parent with the admission question. My mother made a sound. Not quite a word, more like air escaping a tire. My father's hand was shaking. He knocked over his teacup. The brown liquid spread across the white linen like a map of something breaking open. Arjun was shouting now, something about loyalty, about blood, about how I had embarrassed him in front of a client, how I had sabotaged the family. His voice was the only loud thing in the room, bouncing off the hotel walls. I did not raise mine. "And you didn't, did you?" I did not stand. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the last document, a single sheet of plain paper. "This is my resignation from all informal and formal administrative duties related to Banerjee Academy Trust," I said. "Effective immediately. I am terminating my access to the school management software, the trust supplier accounts, and the examination portal. I am also notifying all parents and board officials that all future communications should be directed to the principal on file, as registered with the State Council." I placed it on the table next to the spreading tea stain. "Mr. Mamadale, Sharma stood up. He did not look at Arjun. He looked at me, and then at Patricia Vance, and then he picked up his own folio. "I think we're done here," he said. My mother reached for my arm. I moved my chair back. "Priya," she said. "Priya, please." I looked at her. I looked at the tea spreading across the table. I looked at Arjun, who was still standing, his face red, his hands open and empty. I picked up my empty envelope. I walked out of the room. No one followed me. Not then. I stopped. Foundations can be moved. Visual. A laptop screen. A red login error message. I did not go home. I went to my flat and changed into salwar kameez and sat on my couch with a cup of tea that I let cool while I worked. Then I began the withdrawal. I changed the password on the school management software. The account was in my name, paid for with my personal credit card for the last 5 years because Arjun said the trust couldn't afford the 4,000 rupee monthly fee, and my father had agreed. I cancelled the auto-renewal. I exported the student database to my personal external drive and deleted the master file from the shared cloud folder. I logged into the trust bank account, which I had accessed for 10 years because I was the one who balanced the transactions and caught the errors, and I removed my authorized signatory status through the online portal. The bank sent an automatic notification to the primary account holder, my father, that a signatory had been removed and that pending transactions might be affected. I did not answer my phone when it rang 30 minutes later, my mother's name bright on the screen. I let it ring until the voicemail picked up. I changed the outgoing message on the school line, the number I had carried in my pocket for 10 years, to a generic message directing all calls to Arjun's cell phone, which he never answered before noon. Then I stopped. I had not destroyed anything. I had not hidden information they could not legally obtain. I had simply stopped holding the door open with my shoulder. The machine began to break immediately, the way a clock stops when you stop winding it. Without the software, Arjun could not access the student records to schedule the inspection Mr. Sharma had demanded before closing, nor could he prove the academic certifications he had claimed. Without my signature on the affiliation forms, the board could not process the renewal application, which was due in 21 days, and which I had prepared every year for 10 years. Without my personal funds covering the gap between the fee collections and the teacher salaries, the March salary auto draft bounced for the first time in 4 years, triggering a bank charge of 500 rupees and a notice of default risk from the lender. I did not cause these things. I simply stopped preventing them. I stopped oiling the machine. Visual: a phone screen, 7 missed calls, a kitchen table at night with 1 lamp on. The fallout took 2 weeks to fully arrive, spreading like water, finding every crack in a floor. Mr. Sharma terminated the letter of intent on March 14th, citing material misrepresentation and failure to disclose the true management structure. The EdTech Group's attorney sent a formal notice to Arjun, copied to my father, outlining the discrepancies in the financial disclosures, the lack of licensed management, and the 230,000 rupees in undocumented liabilities. The bank, alerted by the bounce draft and the late fee, called the trust loan due for review and required a full financial audit before the next payment cycle. My father left me 4 voicemails, each one louder than the last. Arjun left 11, the first 3 demanding, the next 4 pleading, the last 4 consisting mostly of silence and breathing. My mother left 3 that started with "How could you do this to your father?" and ended with "We need to talk as a family." I listened to none of them past the first 30 seconds. I deleted them one by one while eating toast at my kitchen counter. The accountant, a man named Gopal, who had prepared the family taxes for a decade, and who had always emailed me directly because I was the one who provided the numbers, called me on March 20th. He was not angry. He was confused in a professional way, the way a surgeon might be confused if the patient walked out mid-operation. He said he could not file the trust return without the school cost documentation, the salary receipts, and the depreciation schedules, which had always come from me in a green folder by the 15th of the month. I told him to contact Arjun. I told him Arjun was the principal. He paused. I could hear him clicking his pen. "Priya," he said, his voice dropping, "Arjun doesn't know the password to the accounting software. He doesn't even know which version we're running." "I know," I said. Visual: a board inspector's clipboard, a laboratory thermometer. The state board inspector called Arjun directly to schedule the compliance inspection he was legally required to attend as the principal of record before the March 15th deadline. Arjun did not know what a compliance inspection entailed. He did not know the inspector's name was Sujata Sen. He did not know that the science lab had a chemical storage violation the safety officer had reported to me 2 months prior, which I had been managing with a temporary cabinet and twice daily inventory checks because my father had refused to pay the 15,000 rupee renovation, saying we could wait until summer. The inspector found the violation during her routine walkthrough. She issued a notice of deficiency and a conditional affiliation warning. The fine was 10,000 rupees. The repair estimate was 40,000, and the chemical supplier threatened to withhold credit until the violation was cleared. My father called me again, this time from the cardiac clinic. His blood pressure was 190/110. He said the stress was killing him, that I was killing him, that a daughter should not do this to her family. I called him to call Arjun. I told him Arjun was the principal. I told him Arjun would handle it. I was calm. I was unbothered. I was free. Visual, a smartphone, 3 gray text bubbles on a screen. The phone call slowed after a month, tapering like a tide going out and leaving things exposed on the sand. Then they changed. My mother called on a Tuesday in April and left a voicemail I did not return for 3 days, not out of spite, but because I was busy learning how to live without the sound of her voice in my ear. She said my father was fine. The blood pressure was managed with medication, and that they had hired an administrative consultant to handle the school because Arjun couldn't do it and work full-time at the startup. She said the consultant fees were eating into the profits, that he charged 8,000 rupees a day, which was highway robbery. She said Arjun was struggling at the startup because of the stress from the sale falling through, that he had been passed over for the promotion he wanted. She did not apologize. She did not say she had been wrong. She said, "We miss you at lunch. Sunday isn't the same." I did not call back. I texted 2 days later, "I'm glad he's well. Take care." That was all. She did not text again. My father texted me in May. It was the first time he had texted me in 3 years, since he had sent me a picture of a sunrise that I had never asked for. The message was 3 sentences, written in the slow, punctuated style of a man who still treats texting like a telegram. "I didn't know it was that bad. I thought you were helping because you wanted to. I should have asked. I read it sitting on my balcony in the evening, the concrete still warm from the day. I read it 3 times. It was not an apology. It was a flicker, a small light in a dark room, enough to see the outline of something broken, but not enough to mend it, not enough to make it whole." I did not reply that day. I let the words sit with me. I replied the next morning while my tea brewed. "Thank you for saying that." He did not write back. I did not expect him to. Some doors, once open, only show you the distance between where you are and where you used to be. Visual, a studio flat, a bookshelf with 12 books, a blue mug. I live in a 1-bedroom now, 10 blocks from the progressive school where I work as the head of curriculum, where I was promoted to academic director in April, because I could finally stay late without a parent calling about a missing report card. I have a money plant on the windowsill that I water on Saturdays, and it has grown 3 new leaves since I bought it in April. I have a blue mug that I bought with my first paycheck after the reckoning. The first thing I had ever purchased just because I liked the color. Not because it was on sale, or because someone else needed it. I wake up early without an alarm. I make tea in the blue mug. I read the newspaper at my small table without checking my phone for parent emergencies or trust bank alerts. On Sundays, I go to the farmer's market 3 streets over and buy vegetables I have never cooked before, launcouchu in strange gourds, and I burn them sometimes, and I eat them anyway because they are mine, and because no one is watching. I am learning to be alone without being lonely. I have said myself. It is slow. It is uneven. It is enough. My name is Priya. I am 35.